As President Trump staved off a revolt after high-profile Republicans unleashed a fierce attack on his character, Silence on the Hill, and the president fires back. NBC News exclusive, new revelations in the wake of that deadly mission in Niger. Senior intelligence and military officials say the U.S. is paving the way for armed drones in the region. In-home deliveries, drivers unlocking your home, leaving packages inside when you're not there. Would you sign up? New vaccine to fight a painful condition. Doctors now recommending millions get the shot. Caught on camera, what critics call twisted fight clubs inside juvenile prisons. Teens allegedly encouraged by their own guards to beat each other up. And a rock and roll legend is gone. We remember the great Fats Domino.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. The same terror concerns that prompted the urgent ban on carrying laptops aboard some international flights to the U.S. last spring have resulted in more big changes at the airport you should know about starting tomorrow. That's the deadline airlines were given to adopt new strict security procedures on overseas flights to the U.S., including more face-to-face interviews, changes that could mean more time spent at the airport. Our Tom Costello has details.
Those seated in rows 20 through 30.
The new security measures apply to every flight coming into the U.S. from a foreign airport, from London to Amsterdam to Taiwan. 2,100 daily flights, 325,000 passengers. Security upgrades both seen and unseen, including closer inspections of personal electronic devices, beefed up security in passenger areas and around the aircraft, and more thorough interviews with passengers as they check in, hoping to identify terrorists. The changes were announced this summer after intelligence suggested ISIS was able to smuggle explosives into laptops. Homeland Security even required passengers flying from 10 Middle East airports to check their laptops until security at those airports improved, which they did. Among the top concerns today, terrorists could travel through multiple countries before boarding a flight to the U.S.
I think with European airport security, they're challenged because they can't control as much access from one country to another, from border to border.
For 180 airlines flying to the U.S., including U.S. carriers, the deadline is now to upgrade their security. Again, this affects overseas airports, not in the U.S. Still, airlines are telling passengers at those overseas airports, get to your flight even earlier, 30 to 60 minutes earlier to the airport because of the security. TSA says the vast majority of airlines have already implemented the new security procedures. Lester?
All right, Tom Costello, thank you. And a day after retiring Senators Bob Corker and Jeff Flake stood up to the president in terms we've rarely heard, there were largely crickets from other elected Republicans today, quieting speculation that a floodgate of resistance might quickly follow, and emboldening Mr. Trump, who happily stood before the cameras to shrug off those damning remarks. Our chief White House correspondent, Hallie Jackson, tells us more.
I will say this. I think the Republican Party has a pretty good unity.
Tonight, a victory lap for the president as a brewing Republican resistance simply hasn't materialized. One day after two retiring Republicans slammed the president's character. Should you be more civil?
Well, I think the press makes me more uncivil than I am. You know, people don't understand. I went to an Ivy League college. I was a nice student. I did very well. I'm a very intelligent person.
When is it okay for you to pull your punches?
Well, I think it's always okay when somebody says something about you that's false. I think it's always okay to counterpunch or to fight back.
To Senators Bob Corker and Jeff Flake, that's part of the problem.
We can't continue to just remain silent when the president keeps going on like this.
But the silence on Capitol Hill speaks volumes. Many Republicans moving on rather than rising up.
We got a job to do, damn it. And so all of this nonsense, I got nothing to say on it. Everyone shut up and do your job, is my view.
All of it, a win for Steve Bannon, too. A source close to the president's former chief strategist tells NBC Bannon feels like it's another day, another scalp, with Flake's retirement just the beginning. The politics playing out at Randy's restaurant in Scottsdale, Arizona, Jeff Flake's state.
Where was all of this high-mindedness that Flake has shown when Obama was in?
But Donald Trump's territory.
He doesn't back down.
The Shoops wish their lawmakers wouldn't either.
They're dedicated to the party, not to the country. And they're just trying to cover their ass so they can get reelected.
A lot of Republicans see getting tax cuts done as a key to getting reelected. And a new development tonight, the president signaling he might be open to cutting down on how much Americans can save in their 401ks without getting taxed right away, even after initially suggesting he didn't want to touch those savings accounts. Lester?
All right, Hallie Jackson at the White House, thank you. The president today also tearing into Democrats and former rival Hillary Clinton over reports that the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee helped fund opposition research that wound up in a dossier containing salacious and unverified allegations about him. We get more from NBC News White House correspondent Kristen Welker.
And they're embarrassed by it, but I think it's a disgrace. It's just really it's a very sad commentary on politics in this country.
President Trump emboldened after revelations the Democrats helped pay for that now famous dossier.
It was made up, and I understand they paid a tremendous amount of money, and Hillary Clinton always denied it.
According to a source familiar with the matter, the Clinton campaign and Democratic National Committee hired the firm Fusion GPS for opposition research in 2016, which concluded before the election. Christopher Steele, a former British spy, producing an explosive document, including some salacious but unverified information about Donald Trump and his potential ties to Russia.
This was the Democrats coming up with an excuse for losing an election.
Clinton campaign officials declined to comment today. Brian Fallon, Clinton's former national press secretary, tweeted, "If even a shred of that dossier ends up helping Mueller, it will prove money well spent." That's a reference to special counsel Robert Mueller. He's investigating Russia's meddling in the U.S. election and potential links to President Trump. Democrats say regardless of who paid for the research, what's important is the information in the document.
I think the key issue for the investigation is how much of the dossier is accurate.
According to the Washington Post, which broke the news, a Republican initiated the original research. So who is that Republican?
I'm sure that will come out.
The president playfully adding,
I have one name in mind. It'll probably be revealed.
NBC News has reached out to all of the major Republican primary candidates, and their campaigns all deny paying for the opposition research that led to that dossier. Lester.
Okay, Kristen Welker, thank you. Even if your family is up to date on all your shots, you'll want to hear this story. New advisories are out on which vaccines adults and children need to stay healthy. A federal panel recommending a new vaccine for shingles and new guidelines for mumps after last year saw the most cases in a decade. NBC's Kristen Dahlgren has details for us.
Like 1 million Americans every year, Turi Gustafson knows the pain of getting shingles.
It's just pain that was like a throbbiness.
And often excruciating skin rash related to the chickenpox. Shingles vaccines used to be recommended to those over 60. But today, a change. The CDC's advisory committee now recommends those over 50 get a new vaccine called Shingrix, even if they've already been vaccinated. The recommendation means insurance companies are more likely to pay for the pricier new vaccine, which in one study reduced the risk of shingles by 97%. There are also changes on the way for mumps vaccines. With current mumps outbreaks spreading at universities like Syracuse, many worry the standard 2 doses of MMR vaccine given to children can wear off. So today, the CDC recommended a 3rd dose for those considered high risk during an outbreak, like college students and healthcare workers. Already this year, almost 5,000 people nationwide have been diagnosed with the mumps.
Our immune system occasionally needs a boost. We have to remind our immune systems by getting another dose of the vaccine.
As for Gustafson, he's already scheduling an appointment to get his new shingles vaccine.
You don't want to have shingles. That I do know.
Hoping an extra dose of prevention can keep millions from feeling his pain. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, New York.
Now to an NBC News exclusive. New revelations in the wake of that deadly ambush in Niger. Senior government officials say the U.S. is considering ramping up the drone mission in that region of Africa. And we're also learning new details from the day the ambush occurred. Our senior investigative correspondent, Cynthia McFadden, has details.
Tonight, as the president appears to distance himself from the deaths of 4 American soldiers in Niger.
It's a dangerous business. So what? No, I didn't. Not specifically. But I have generals that are great generals, These are great fighters. These are warriors. And I gave them authority to do what's right so that we win.
Senior intelligence and military officials are now telling NBC News the Trump administration is in the process of deepening our military involvement in Africa, quietly paving the way for lethal strikes against terrorists in Niger, with a plan to arm Reaper drones that fly over the country. U.S. counterterrorism documents show the French have already decided to arm their Reaper drones for use in the region.
Having armed drones in Niger would be a big deal. It would be an expansion of U.S. capabilities, and it would demonstrate clearly that the U.S. is expanding its sense of the war on terror battle space.
The U.S. is constructing a $100 million airbase in Niger. The plan is to position the armed drones there. And the death of the 4 U.S. soldiers has accelerated pressure on the Niger government to allow it, according to U.S. officials. NBC News is also learning more details of what happened on the day that the Green Berets were killed. Multiple military and intelligence sources tell NBC News there was a second, more secretive U.S. Special Operations team working less than 100 miles away from where the ambush took place. It would be intelligence like this that would provide targets for any new drone campaign. All of this, Lester, underscoring the complicated nature of the Niger mission and may explain the difficulty the Pentagon has had in answering basic questions about what went wrong even 3 weeks after the incident.
A lot of layers here.
Indeed.
All right, Cynthia McFadden, thank you. There's developing news involving the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Reports she was evacuated from a camp for displaced people in South Sudan because of a raucous demonstration against that country's president. UN security guards reportedly firing tear gas after she left. Her spokesperson tells NBC News the ambassador was never in any danger. Rather, she left the rally a few minutes early when the crowd appeared to get out of hand. We turn now to the investigation blowing the lid off an alleged culture of abuse inside one state's justice system. The Miami Herald uncovering shocking videos showing teenage prisoners beaten, mistreated, and even pitted against each other in fight clubs at Florida juvenile detention centers. We get the story from NBC's Tammy Leitner, and a note, some of these images you're about to see may be upsetting.
Critics say these videos show a disturbing pattern inside Florida juvenile detention centers. Fight clubs, teens allegedly encouraged by guards to beat each other.
The guard told me to beat up another kid.
Andrew Ostrovsky, who was sent away for joyriding in his dad's car, tells us he didn't want to fight, so a guard retaliated.
At the end, I said, you know what, no, I'm not going to do it.
This surveillance video shows the officer toss the then scrawny 14-year-old to the ground, punching him in the face, breaking Andrew's nose in 2 places.
But I still have the thoughts about it, and I still am thinking about it. I still have the visions of it. It changed me a lot.
The system went against my son.
The officer resigned after an investigation found he used more than necessary force. But some beatings go even further than broken bones. According to the investigative reports, witnesses say 17-year-old Elord Revolt died because of something called honey bunning, where an officer bribes the juvenile with a sweet treat to carry out a beatdown. In this 68 seconds caught on video, a dozen inmates beat Elord, kicking him, stomping on him. He died 30 hours later. Prosecutors said the allegations officers instigated that attack were not corroborated by evidence, but that across the detention system, they found staff likely engaged in the practice of offering honey buns or other food as a reward to youth detainees to carry out physical attacks.
Kids were said to have a honey bun on their head or a bounty.
Carol Marvin Miller of the Miami Herald spent 2 years pouring through a decade of records and surveillance video from Florida's Department of Juvenile Justice, uncovering almost 1,500 allegations of abuse.
The turning of children into goons was occurring in every corner of Florida.
This teenager needed his kidney removed after being thrown on the ground. And here, 2 teens fight MMA style while a staffer appears to referee. We asked Governor Rick Scott about the allegations.
No abuse is acceptable, and so, you know, the goal is constantly to hold people accountable.
Meanwhile, kids like Andrew are left to pick up the pieces.